Hey everybody, Steve Gonzer here, trying to stay hold and stay true to making sure that I go live all this month to help you guys in your training. I'm pretty set up with something that's a little weird. I have like a tripod thing attached to my chair and my whiteboard behind me. I want to talk to you guys about something that is super critical, and it's helped me do a couple things. I'll just kind of spin here. It's helped me do some of these Ironmans, a couple Boston marathons, and it's about managing your training. And I've been talking all this month about training plans and how do you train smarter, how do you get the results you want on race day. And I want to talk about some patients that came in the clinic today, and if they're watching, they're like, oh, you mentioned the thing that I was talking about, what we talked about in the clinic today. And I can tell you, it's just, I had this conversation about 5 or 6 times today about managing injury, managing your training so that you don't end up like the research points out of 80% of runners are injured every year in a way that drastically changes their training. How do you not end up like that? And it's all about injury management. So I'm going to talk about a couple things. And if you haven't seen any of these videos in the past, I've been doing them all month to help everyone train smarter in 2019. You can actually go to our videos tab on our Facebook page and you can find all those videos. But we're going to dive right into the training of managing injuries. So this is completely off the cuff, but I want to just start off by saying that if you're a runner and you're training for a race, you should absolutely expect some bumps along the way. And I talked about this before when I was showing video of how we build my training plans on our site for our members. We use this tool and we have like a 16 or 18 week plan. In the 16 to 18 weeks, I'm always trying to trend people towards that 18-week marathon plan or a 16-week half marathon plan because it gives you some wiggle rooms. You have some guardrails that you can bang into if life gets in the way, if you get injured, if you need to miss some training, you have time. You want to try to avoid, which is what a lot of people do, is they get crunched for time, like, oh, that race is coming up, and they give themselves 8, 10, 12 weeks to train, and it's just not enough time. You end up getting a little hurt, and then what happens is you freak out and you go into crazy runner mode and you just run through everything. So I'm going to talk about that. When do you know the wheels are falling off and that you are about to have an injury that could set you back 6 months or longer? And it's something that I see a lot in the clinic because people go into this freak out mode. So let me know in the clinic, see, I was at the clinic all day, so this is since like 5 o'clock. I haven't got rid of this cough yet, but let me know in the comments if this sounds like you, or if you guys have done this in the past, or what your mentality is. Do you have a mantra when you end up start getting hurt? A lot of people just, one of the funniest stories I have from one of my runners is I was talking about, getting the mentality of, are you hurt or is it something wrong? And she says, Steve, my knee doesn't hurt. It just feels awful. And I always laugh at that because this is the kind of, I would say crap, this is the kind of stuff I hear all the time in the clinic when people are just trying to justify being injured. So the first thing out of the gate, I'm just going to tell you that I'm going to see what I can do here. I'm on a rolling chair, actually. I can tell you that most injuries, hopefully you guys can see this okay, and it's not reversed around. Oh, it is reversed around, so that's not even going to work. How do I do that? Let's see if I do this. Hang with me. Does that work better? There we go. I'm just going to spin that around. I won't be able to see you, so I'll come back for comments in a minute. But most injuries will get better in about 2 weeks, okay? So if you do the right stuff, but what people do is they tend to just run through things. Now, if you have a little buffer in your training plan, you don't have to rush it, and you can let your body heal, get some cross training in, get some strength training in, and then go for it. So just know that most things can turn around in 2 weeks if you don't go into freak out mode. So how do you know that you have something brewing? The first thing that I would say is that you have pain or symptoms that bleed into your daily life. And I don't even know if I'm on camera right now because I'm just looking at the back of my phone. But if you have, I'm just going to write ADLs on the board here. ADLs are activities of daily living. If your foot, your knee, your Achilles, your ankle, your hip, your back, if you have pain going up and down stairs, walking, some of the simpler tasks, things that are way easier than running, if you have pain with those, chances are your running is not going to go really well. So you really want to make sure that, if you're starting to notice pain in daily life outside of running, you're going in the wrong direction. The second thing that I look for that you know that you're getting injured is that you start to trend greater than a 3 out of 5 in my scale. And I'm going to talk you through this because it's pretty common, and most of the people I see are over the age of 40. And I'm going to talk to you guys, I actually have a whole seminar on this, but I want to give you the kind of the nitty gritty on this. If you're a runner over the age of 40, 50, 60, you can't probably remember the last time you didn't have a little something, right? And you're not going to shut it down every time you feel a little something or your knee's a little tweaked. And I get that. But how do you know when you're in trouble? So I have this 0 to 5 scale, and that's what I want to talk you through, because this runner that I had today, actually about 5 or 6 of them, didn't follow this rule for 3 months, and now they're going to be missing 3 to 5 months because they just grind away at something, and they get right to the point where they can still run, but they're just torching their body. So I'm going to look and see what's my real estate. Oh, this is what happens when you go live and you have to step on your Roomba. Oh man, that's embarrassing. Hopefully no one saw that, right? I'm going to move this thing out of here. Oh, stupid Roomba. Alright, no one saw that. You can't edit that out because now we're live. Fantastic. So we talked about the activities of daily living. Let me make sure. I'm going to do a 0 to 5 scale here. Oh man. 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me make sure I'm on camera with that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this. Alright, so we're perfectly on camera. So I talked about the activities of daily living, and then there's this greater than 3. Anything greater than a 3, 4, 5, I can tell you that you're in trouble. So if you're running, my 0 scale is you feel nothing. Obviously, nothing. You're going to keep running at that time. Nothing's really a huge issue. You're just feeling you're feeling good. There's nothing really to it. You're just going to continue running. Then I talk to people, and this works for when you're currently injured and if you're coming off injury. 1 is awareness. So I'm just going to write aware. And what that means to me, if you're a 1 out of 5 on the scale, is you're running and you're like, man, I don't know, I think something's there. This is the point where a lot of people who are injured kind of like, they feel like it's messing with them in their head, and they feel like they're just, it's just kind of there. And 2 is feel it. Now this is different than the previous. Imagine for a minute, this is what I tell my runner today, you're running along, everything feels great. You're at a 0. And then you go and you're like, what's that? I think I kind of feel that. And then you progress to 2, which is, I definitely feel my knee, ankle, whatever right now. It doesn't hurt, but it's there. This is kind of the yellow light, this 2. Because what most runners do is they go to this 3, and going to the 3, 4, 5 is what torches people for a long time. So I'm just going to put a line down there. A 3 is hurts a little, but you can keep running. This is the thing, like, oh, my knee's bothering me, but, I can keep running. This is, throw me some likes or loves or whatever if this is you, because so many people, when they think that they're out for a run and something's going wrong, they get to hear, they're like, I just got to get home, or it's not that bad, it'll loosen up, it's not, whatever it might be. At the point where you go from this kind of gradual scale that hurts a little bit, particularly after an injury, it means whatever tissue, maybe it's your Achilles, maybe it's your quad, maybe whatever, it's breaking down. Think of it as most of the injuries that we see are joint or tendon muscle. Muscle tendons breaking apart, joints are getting bruised. This is what's happening that hurts a little bit. But what's the problem with this is no one ever stops here. What they end up doing is going to this 4, which is definitely hurts. So def hurts. That's what I told my runner today. And she admitted she goes to here. This is where you're running like, oh wow, my knee hurts. I probably shouldn't be doing this. And that's what a 4 is. At this point, 3, you're damaging tissue. 4, you just really kind of throwing some logs on the fire at this point. And a 5 is a limp. Using this scale, obviously 5 is where most people shut it down. They call for a ride. Some runners continue to run home. That is kind of the big thing that we see with most of the runners. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I can tell you in your training, if you're running along and you're in the 0, 1, 2 range, you're safe. But if you get to the 3 and it's a couple runs, you're getting up into a 3 range, something's wrong. You can turn it around in 2 weeks if you don't venture into 3, 4s, and 5s. So that's a critical part of this. The other thing is, so we have 2 rules. We have this rule, And then we have the activities of daily living. If you start to have, you run, it hurts a little bit, it's bleeding in, going up and down stairs is sore, kneeling is sore, you got something going on. If you rushed into your training plan, it's going to be a lot more difficult to manage that. So what I want to make sure you guys do is just have this in your mindset. I think there's a couple questions. I think one of them was, let me just take a look here, is looking at how long does it take to train for a 5K. Our training plans on our site are 10 weeks. It depends, so 5K is a little tricky. If you're looking to train for a 5K, you should definitely be looking towards, it depends on if you're running multiples or you're just trying to PR one, but that's a tough situation. So there's a lot of stuff out there. But I want to show you this quick. Get this to work. Without stepping on my Roomba again. I'm going to go pretty raw here again. So this is our site. I want to show you, if anyone's struggling to get back on the road, I talked about the training plans that we have in here and building plans. But I have this seminar I think can help people out. Let's see, Fast Over 40, Injury Management Seminar. We have a couple other ones like Running Through Fatigue, How to Build a Plan, Foam Rolling Seminar, stuff like that. I'm going to go into here. If you're struggling with an injury, zoom out a little bit, you guys can see all my tabs and everything. Real quick, that's my favorite picture ever. That's me and my boy. They have a little girl now too, but that's my favorite picture ever. Where he's doing a kids race, and I think I carried him anyways. But this How to Avoid Injury Meltdown is a seminar that includes a system of training on our site. And what it is I can tell you most injuries respond very similarly in how you treat them. Most people go after hip strength, core strength, rest the tissue. This seminar is not necessarily for everyone, but I think it's something that people should watch if you're struggling with injury, because it allows you to know how to reload and unload an injury. It's a very simple system to follow to help with a lot of injuries that I've been using in the clinic as a physical therapist with Buffalo Rehab Group for a really long time. It's available on the site, but in general, if you want to take a look at that and the training plans and the strength training workouts, definitely jump on the website. There's a $1 trial, I think, in the comment or in the post above. Real quick, I talked about Matt's question about training for 5K. If you're going to be running one 5K for a PR, I definitely think a 10-week plan is perfect. But Melinda asked about building a program per injury. Tough to say. It depends on what your injury's like. If you're having a lot of symptoms, it's tough to build a plan on that. You have to rest the tissue almost to let it heal. And Matt says I am on and I look great until I stepped on the Roomba. Oh, dang. Anyways, that's all I really had to talk about tonight, because I had that conversation a lot with some runners. If you're definitely struggling, check out the Injury Management Seminar. If you're looking to train smarter in 2019, go ahead and build a training plan. You get to pick all the custom things with that. It's found right up in our header somewhere in here. Exercises, training plan, build a new plan. You get to kind of pick your 5K, 10K, half, full marathon plans. But hopefully that helps for you guys. I'll be back probably tomorrow. I'm going to talk a little bit more about strength training. And then I have one more question here from Susan. Why would onset of pain happen at different distances? Good question. Let's actually talk about that. If anyone's still on, I was probably almost said my goodbyes already. Back in weird mode. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase this stuff. This has actually had this conversation with a runner today. Like, why can I run, but I can't run as far as I want to run, and all this other stuff. So let's talk about that. This is a good question. I legitimately had this question from a patient today. We talked about this. So this is a great thing to work on with the injury management seminar that I have. I am legitimately on my chair right now, holding this thing up. Oh well, let's see. All right, so we have the whiteboard, my markers in my pocket. So I had a patient today, and let's talk about injuries a little bit more, because this is actually a great segue into something I want to talk about. Maybe I should have just did it tomorrow, but when you're looking at any running injury, this marker kind of sucks, but there's make sure I'm close enough. There's a threshold that any injury can take without getting super flared up, right? So for some runners, this is like anything over 4 over 4 miles is a problem. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 18 minutes or 20 miles, whatever. There's a tolerance for tissue, and anything below this running down here, you're not even near the threshold. But what can happen is the tissue can only take so much pounding depending on how fresh it is or how the integrity of something is. If you have a tendon, it can only tolerate so much pulling. It's about 80 steps a minute per leg when you're running. So if you're running for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes is 800 pulls on that leg or on that tendon. So there's going to be a breaking point. Like if you're not trained for a 50-mile run, you walk out the door and do that, you can get hurt. If you're not trained for running 3 miles a couple times a week, you're going to pull something because the tissue's not ready for it. So I had a runner today that came in and she constantly, her time, she couldn't run more than 2 miles. And she's a very fit individual, but constantly can't run more than 2 miles. And she was the one that went to a 4 or a 5 every single time. And what she ended up doing is every time she ran out, she would just run to 2 miles, right? So what happens when you just continuously run to 2 miles is you're over the threshold, and what ends up happening is this threshold comes down. And then you start being like, well, a month ago I was only running a mile or 2 miles, now I can only run 1 mile. So instead, there's always a breaking point with tissue depending on your training or depending on the injury. So when you're thinking about this, if you're like someone that's just running less and less and less and less, you know, 50-mile-a-week runner or 40-mile-a-week runners used to running 40 to 50 miles, they get hurt, so they say, okay, I'm not going to run as much, I'll back it down to 20 or 30 miles a week, or 30 mile, back it down to 20 or 15. You're still running and you're probably above threshold. You probably need to shut it down a little bit. So what we generally do with these runners is we stop them from doing that. We offload the tissue, and this is all part of the injury management seminar. If you are struggling with something, I definitely recommend, it's a $1 trial to take a look at this, but we recommend getting you to running successfully below threshold, and then what happens? Your threshold goes up, and then you run here. The trouble part is we get someone's threshold to go from 2 to 3 miles, and what do? They want to go and say, I can run longer. They go to 6, and they get re-injured because runners are a little crazy. But this is kind of the way I look at some of these things. Find a distance you're successful running at, and it can definitely help. But every tissue, your knee, your ankle, your tendons, your ligaments, your joints, they all have a threshold to how much pounding they're going to take. The problem is when we become weak, we don't have the strength, we don't have the flexibility around things. It alters how we move a little bit and wears spots out. So that's where the strength training comes in, the smarter training comes in, and I hope that helps. Let me see if I have any more questions on here. I don't. So with that being said, that's the end of this. No problem, Susan. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I'm going to come out and talk a little bit more about strength training. So have a great night. Bye.